No one believed it at first. A puppy falls from a 90-foot bridge into a raging river and somehow lives. But what happened next wasn't luck. It was something deeper. He didn't come back broken. He came back awakened. They called it instinct. They called it coincidence. But again and again, this little dog found what others couldn't see. Life hiding in the shadows, danger before it struck, cries no one else could hear. His name is River. And this is the story of the fall that opened a door no one expected. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from, and if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. Asheville, North Carolina. A May afternoon laced with sunlight and birdsong. The warmth of spring had returned with gentle confidence, coaxing tulips open along the sidewalks and sending children laughing through the parks. The sky above was a gentle cobalt blue, cloudless still, as if holding its breath. June. Whitaker, 36, moved with a purposeful calm. A veterinarian known for her steady hands and even steadier heart. She had soft brown hair usually tucked into a loose braid, and eyes that held both kindness and fatigue. On this particular day, she wore faded jeans, a maroon field jacket, and sneakers dusted with dried grass. In her left hand was a slim leash, bright red, attached to the collar of a clumsy 3-month-old German shepherd named River. River was all legs and ears, a fuzzy storm of curiosity. His coat hadn't yet decided if it wanted to be sable or tan, and his paws seemed far too big for his small frame. He bounded ahead and then darted back, never more than a few feet from June's boots. This was his first proper outing beyond backyard grass, his first time on the Trellis Overlook Bridge. The bridge, a 90-foot-high arc of steel and timber, crossed the French Broad River. It was a local favorite. From its center, the view swept open to reveal a churning ribbon of water coursing through a gorge framed by pine and poplar. In the distance, the Blue Ridge Mountains rippled like an old song humming low. June paused near the midpoint of the bridge river, sitting obediently beside her, his tail wagging in sweeping arcs that tapped lightly against her calf. She knelt and scratched behind his ears, smiling faintly. "You're doing so well, buddy. Brave little explorer." Her voice was low and warm, shaped by years of talking to animals, as if they understood everything, and maybe River did. He looked up at her with amber eyes too earnest for his age, but the peace didn't last. It happened fast. A pair of teenagers flew by on skateboards, weaving too quickly around a pedestrian with a stroller. The screech of wheels on wood echoed. One board clipped the bridge railing, wobbling violently. River, startled, jumped back with a yelp. June reacted instantly, reaching for the leash, but her grip failed. The loop slipped from her fingers as River's collar twisted off his neck. "No, River, stay." Her voice was sharp, breaking against the rising wind. But the puppy didn't stay. He staggered backward, right into a narrow gap in the bridge railing. A section damaged by last month's storm, still unrepaired. The hole was just wide enough. June lunged, her fingers grazing the edge of his fur. For a fraction of a second, she thought she had him. Then he was gone. The silence was so sudden it hurt. Everything held still, the air, the people, even time itself. Beneath the bridge, the French Broad roared. Spring rains had swelled the river to near flood, and it moved with a savage energy, dragging fallen branches and white water over jagged rocks. It was a place known for claiming things, kayaks, trees, sometimes lives. On the riverbank below, Liam Fox had just unstrapped his kayak when he heard the scream. 29, lean with sun-roughened skin and a beard just this side of reckless, Liam was a guide for high-adrenaline rafting tours and an ex-lifeguard with a reputation for diving into things before thinking. He wore a dark green paddle vest over a thermal shirt, and his eyes were already locked on the water. He saw the splash, then impossibly a small, dark shape flailing in the current. Without hesitation, Liam kicked his kayak into the river, yanked the paddle free and launched. Above, June was running. Her heart pounded like a war drum. She didn't remember how she got to the end of the bridge, only that people moved aside for her, stunned and silent. She careened down the river trail, feet slipping on loose gravel, her breath ragged with panic. River had fallen 90 feet into madness, and yet he was alive. The puppy resurfaced, nearly 40 yards downstream, fighting the current with desperate, jerky movements. He paddled instinctively, but was no match for the power of the river. Liam adjusted course, reading the rapids, trying to stay ahead of the little dog's drift. But the danger wasn't over. A half-submerged log jam called a strainer by river folk loomed ahead, jagged branches waiting like claws just beneath the surface. River was heading straight for it. And then something shifted. A branch that had been drifting harmlessly nearby veered suddenly, as if pulled by an invisible hand. It wedged itself between River and the deadly trap. The puppy collided with it instead, bouncing off with a small, startled yelp. Liam didn't waste the moment. He drove the kayak forward, closing the distance. "Hang on, buddy, I got you." He extended the paddle. Miraculously, River reached out and clung with his paws. Liam pulled him toward the boat, cradled his soaked body into the bow. The kayak rocked violently. A surge struck from the side. For one terrible moment, they tilted toward capsizing. But River didn't thrash. He went still, pressing against Liam's chest, trusting. Together, they made it through. June was waist-deep in the shallows when Liam guided the kayak ashore. He handed the trembling, soaked bundle of fur into her arms. River gave one weak wag of his tail before collapsing, completely spent. "He's alive." June whispered, tears falling silently down her cheeks as she held him against her. "He's really alive." Paramedics arrived moments later. With them was Dr. Harvey Grant, a silver-haired veterinarian who had known June since her internship days. He helped her assess River right there on the riverbank. "No broken bones," Harvey muttered, astonished. "No signs of internal damage. It doesn't make sense." "It's impossible," June replied. But she couldn't stop smiling as she wrapped River in a blanket. Her hands shook, but her spirit settled. For the first time in 5 years, she felt a familiar warmth bloom in her chest. She remembered another dog, a black Labrador named Marley. Marley had died on this same river, different bridge, same grief. She had never forgiven herself, and she had never come back here. Not until today. The Trellis Overlook Bridge had always held too much of her story. It was where she'd proposed to her ex-wife, and where silence eventually returned like the tide. But maybe it had one more story to offer. This one, about survival, about second chances, and a dog named River. The hum of the hospital-grade heater blended with the rustle of emergency blankets. River lay curled on a folded towel inside June's veterinary clinic, the soft rise and fall of his breath, steady but shallow. His fur was still damp, clinging in tufts along his ribs. June knelt beside him, pressing the back of her hand against his ear. His temperature was climbing slowly, but enough to calm the storm that had been in her chest since the fall. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and pine. Rain from earlier had left the front steps slick, and the late evening air over Asheville carried the kind of quiet only found after something terrible has passed. Streetlights shimmered on the wet pavement outside, and the wind rattled the old oak sign that bore the name Whitaker Animal Care. Liam Fox leaned against the doorframe arms, crossed his river gear still damp and dripping onto the rubber mat. The sleeves of his thermal shirt were pushed up to his elbows, exposing the faint scars on his forearms, old ones, faint and silvery, as though time had only half erased them. His blue eyes, usually full of boldness, were unreadable now. He wasn't supposed to still be here. But something beyond protocol or politeness had rooted him to this moment. "He's stabilizing, June," said without looking up. Her voice had returned to its usual composure, though her shoulders were tight. Heart strong, breathing even. No internal bleeding. It doesn't add up. Maybe it's one of those things you don't try to add, Liam replied quietly. You just take it. June finally glanced at him. Her expression was softer now, the kind that comes after running through fire and finding somehow you're still breathing. Liam took a step closer, his boots squeaking on the floor. You said this was his first real outing. June nodded. He'd been confined for weeks. Just finished his last round of shots 2 days ago. I thought the bridge would be a good place for him to expand. Liam crouched beside her, looking at River with something akin to reverence. The way he clung to me in the kayak, it wasn't random. He knew what to do. I've pulled people out of the river before. They panic, fight. He just trusted. That memory flickered through Liam's mind. 6 years earlier, a child slipping beneath the surface of the French Broad, lost in seconds. The boy's face was pale as milk when Liam dragged him out, coughing water, but alive. That rescue had turned Liam away from corporate life and towards something that made him feel human again. River's eyes, terrified, but not wild, had stirred that same feeling. June noticed the silence in his expression. You've saved someone here before. Yeah, he answered slowly. Kid, 7 years old. Fell in during a family picnic. No one saw it happen. He didn't scream. I just happened to be close. Sometimes happened to be is just another way of saying meant to. June said, brushing River's fur with the gentlest stroke. At that moment, the clinic door creaked open. A woman stepped inside the bell above the frame, letting out a short chime. Evening, she said, removing her windbreaker. She was in her early 40s with dark skin, a short afro, and wire-frame glasses that fogged from the change in temperature. I came as soon as I heard. I was on call at the shelter when the report hit dispatch. This was Delia Rhodes Asheville's municipal animal control officer. A former police officer turned animal advocate, Delia was known for her no-nonsense attitude, sharp intuition, and an uncanny ability to find lost pets. Hey, Delia, June greeted her with tired relief. Glad you're here. Delia walked over and knelt beside River, inspecting him silently for a few moments. Looks like someone upstairs wasn't done with this one yet. Liam offered a hand. Liam Fox. I pulled him from the river. Delia nodded once. He's lucky you were there. I don't think it was luck, Liam replied, glancing at June. Delia raised an eyebrow but didn't press. June recapped the fall, and rescue emphasizing the odd timing of the floating branch that blocked River from the strainer. It wasn't debris. It moved against the current, like it had a mind of its own. Delia remained quiet, then finally said, Sometimes nature moves to protect its own. That river's taken a lot. Maybe it gave something back tonight. They watched as River stirred slightly. His paws twitched in sleep. June leaned down. His temperature's almost normal. He'll make it through the night. Liam's face relaxed slightly, though his posture remained guarded. You mind if I check on him in the morning? You're welcome any time. June said, not missing the flicker of something in his voice. Gratitude, attachment. Maybe something deeper. As Delia left to file a report with the city, June prepped a small kennel with heated blankets and a soft fleece mat. She lifted River, gently cradling him like a fragile artifact, and transferred him to the enclosure. Liam stood near the door, hand on the knob. I'll bring breakfast. For both of you. Just coffee for me, June replied with a half-smile. Black. Got it. Vet-grade caffeine. He paused before leaving. You think he'll be okay long-term, I mean? June looked at the small shape in the kennel. Physically, yes. But I've seen dogs change after trauma. Sometimes for the better. Sometimes not. Liam nodded slowly, then slipped into the night. June stayed at the clinic long after the lights in Asheville dimmed. She sat beside River's kennel, her back against the wall, listening to the quiet breathing of a life that should have ended hours ago. Her thoughts drifted to Marley, the black lab she'd lost, and to the scar tissue that grief never fully healed. But tonight, there was something different in the air, like the universe had whispered back. The morning air in Asheville still clung to its mountain coolness, though the sun had begun to burn through the fog that lingered between rooftops. It was day 5 since the fall, and River had already returned to himself in ways that defied every chart and prognosis. He was eating, he was walking, he was wagging his tail as if nothing had ever gone wrong. But that wasn't what disturbed June Whitaker the most. It started with small things. The doorbell would ring, and River would already be at the front tail, swaying slowly. Ears perked. Once was coincidence, twice strange. But by the 5th time, each one before the sound actually occurred, June began writing it down. She took notes in a small leather-bound veterinary journal she usually used for case reports. But this wasn't a case. It was something else. He started standing by the sink 5 seconds before the faucet sputtered, like he knew June had forgotten to turn it off. He brought her phone from the couch cushion just moments before it buzzed with a call. And one night, he stared at the window for 2 minutes before a thunderstorm arrived out of a completely clear sky. June wasn't prone to superstition, but this wasn't about belief. It was about observation. She sat at her desk in the clinic one afternoon, rereading her notes under the dim overhead bulb. Behind her, River slept, curled at the foot of the file cabinet. She could see the scar on his leg from where the river's driftwood had scraped him. It was the only real evidence left from the fall. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like breath. The sound calmed her until River suddenly bolted upright. He didn't bark at first, just stared at the wall. Then he took off paws thudding against the floor as he raced toward the back exit. River June called startled. She ran after him, grabbing her jacket on the way out. He didn't go far. Just beyond the clinic parking lot where the trail led back to the French Broad River stood frozen, growling low. His body was rigid with attention, pointed toward a thicket of reeds near the riverbank. As June approached, she could hear something too. A faint, panicked squeal barely there. It sounded like crying. River pawed at the mud, digging fast and with purpose. June dropped to her knees beside him, pulling back the reeds. What she found stopped her heart. A plastic grocery bag tangled in vines and nearly underwater. It twitched. She tore it open and gasped. Inside, 3 kittens, soaked, shaking eyes sealed shut from birth, struggled to breathe. "Oh my God," she whispered. She scooped them gently into her jacket. River whined softly, nudging one with his nose. They had minutes at best. June ran them back to the clinic, yelling for her assistant, and together they rushed the kittens into the warming unit. They rubbed each one gently with gauze, used tiny droppers to push warmth back into their bodies. Within 20 minutes, the smallest one let out a frail mew. They were going to live. June sank into her chair afterward, trembling, River resting his chin on her lap. "How did you know?" she asked aloud, but not to him, to whatever force might be listening. Later that evening, Dr. Harvey Grant arrived. The silver-haired veterinarian wore a wool sweater, old corduroy slacks, and glasses that always slid slightly down his nose. He'd mentored June years ago and still stopped by unannounced when something piqued his interest. Harvey leaned over River with a flashlight, checking pupils and reflexes. "He's not showing any neurological trauma. That's the strange part. A fall like that should have caused at least a mild concussion. And yet, nothing." June recounted River's behavior over the past few days. The phone, the thunderstorm, the kittens. Harvey pulled off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Some dogs are sensitive. I've seen them detect seizures before they happen, sense illness before any symptoms. But this is different." He glanced at River, who was now chewing gently on a rope toy content as ever. "Do you believe in intuition?" Harvey June asked, voice quieter now. "I believe the body knows more than we give it credit for. But this," he paused, "might go beyond that." Later, June sat alone at her kitchen table, flipping through her journal. She had drawn a small symbol beside each note, a way to mark behavior patterns. But now they filled the page, overlapping building towards something she didn't fully understand. She began a new section at the back, theory-heightened perception post-trauma. Possible extrasensory awareness. Neural reconfiguration. Then she scratched it out and wrote, "River knows things. I don't know how yet, but I trust him." The next morning, a visitor arrived at the clinic unannounced. She was tall, angular, with a long black coat and hair the color of crow feathers braided over one shoulder. "I'm Mira Talbot," she said calmly. "I read about your puppy in the Asheville Herald. I'm not a journalist. I'm a researcher. Cognitive behavior and animal trauma." June hesitated. "And you came here because—" Mira offered a small smile. "Because animals who survive the impossible often return with more than they left with. And I think River might be one of them." Blue Echo Lake shimmered under the noonday sun, like a mirror tipped toward the heavens. It was the first warm Saturday of June, and Asheville had come out in full color. Families picnicked under old oaks. Children threw frisbees, and the lake rippled with the laughter of teens swimming past the floating docks. It was the kind of day that wrapped itself in perfection. Nothing broken, nothing wrong, until it was. June Whitaker sat on a shaded bench near the trailhead sipping from a thermos of iced hibiscus tea. River lay at her feet, ears relaxed, but scanning. They weren't working today, not officially, but June no longer believed in coincidence when it came to River. Nearby, Liam Fox was helping a group of kids bait hooks at the fishing pier. His sleeves were rolled his tan deeper now from days guiding summer rafting tours. When he saw June watching him, he grinned easy and open in a way that still made her wary, though less so with each passing week. Then it happened. River bolted upright, body rigid. His eyes snapped toward the far swimming cove. Without a sound, he took off tail, low shoulders, hunched legs pumping toward the water. River June called already running. Liam turned at her voice, saw the urgency and followed. The girl couldn't have been more than 12. Her friends were still splashing unaware. She'd slipped under silently, a seizure, the worst kind of drowning quiet and visible. River hit the water like a missile. His strokes were clean, fast, terrifyingly accurate. June reached the shoreline seconds behind him, scanning the waves for any sign. Then movement. River's snout rose above the surface, gripping fabric in his teeth. The girl. Liam waded in thigh deep, and together they pulled her onto the sand. She was unconscious, pale, trembling. June dropped to her knees and began compressions. "Call 911, she shouted. A man with a cell phone broke from the crowd already dialing. The girl's lips were tinged blue. But after 30 seconds, her chest jerked. A cough. Water poured from her mouth. She gasped. She was alive. Paramedics arrived minutes later. One knelt beside June. "If you'd gotten here 30 seconds later." June didn't answer. She looked at River, soaked and panting, head resting on the girl's leg, watching her, waiting. 2 days later, the front page of the Asheville Gazette read, "Puppy hero saves drowning child again." The again was not an exaggeration. Just a week later, River began pacing by the back door. His movements were different this time, not panicked, but driven, focused. He nudged June's hip with his nose, then barked once sharp, purposeful. "What is it?" she asked, standing. River trotted to the truck, circling it. Liam happened to arrive just then, a brown paper bag of peach turnovers in hand. "You're getting the look," he said. June glanced at the dog. "The look? Yeah, the we're going now look. Come on, I'll drive." They followed River's lead, winding out of town and into the national forest. River barked once at every turn, then went quiet, his eyes trained forward. It took 45 minutes to reach a gravel lot by a hiking trail rarely used. One car sat parked, dusty, empty. June's brow creased. "This area's off-grid." River jumped from the truck, nose to the ground, then lifted it to the wind and took off. They followed him into dense underbrush. He didn't follow scent trails. He moved like he was tracking a signal only he could hear. 20 minutes in, they found him. A man early 60s slumped at the base of a tree, pale, breathing shallow. A medical bracelet on his wrist read Type 1 diabetes. Liam checked his pulse while June rummaged through her med kit. His blood sugar must have crashed. He probably got lost and wandered until he couldn't go on. They stabilized him, called for extraction. Later in the hospital, the man whispered hoarsely to June, "Your dog saved me. I was seeing things. I thought I imagined him." "You didn't," she replied gently. That evening, June returned to the clinic and updated her journal. She'd run out of room in the first one and had begun a second. She labeled each event now by pattern sensing distress, predictive alert spatial awareness. But this latest incident didn't fit. River hadn't reacted to symptoms. He'd led them miles off any trail directly to the man. It was as if somehow he knew, and June wasn't the only one curious. A black SUV pulled into the clinic lot the next morning. From it stepped a tall woman in a slate-gray suit, long silver hair swept into a bun. Her presence was surgical, efficient, controlled. "I'm Dr. Rhea Belmont," she said, handing June a laminated badge from Duke University. "Neuroscience and cognitive anomaly research. I've been following your reports. May I observe?" Dr. Belmont set up a discreet station in the back room of the clinic, her laptop humming as she reviewed footage, brain scan archives, and behavioral charts. She spoke little, her voice smooth, deliberate. After watching River react to a doorbell 2 seconds before it rang with the power disabled, she turned to June. "This isn't just hyper-awareness. The fall may have initiated neuroplastic adaptation at an unprecedented level. There's a chance his sensory matrix rewired to access data beyond standard biofeedback. He's not sensing the present. He's reading fragments of the imminent." June blinked. "You're saying he can see the future?" "I'm saying," Belmont replied, "that our current understanding of time sensation and empathy might be incomplete." Meanwhile, Liam's visits had become more frequent. He'd always bring something: coffee, biscuits, wildflowers. But he never overstayed. Until one evening, they sat beside the lake, the same place River had saved the girl. The air smelled of honeysuckle, the water dark and smooth as obsidian. Liam broke the silence. "You know why I keep coming back." June glanced at him, unsure. "It's River. He reminds me of someone." He looked away, face tightening. "My sister Ava. She died when we were kids. Epileptic seizure during a field trip. I was supposed to be watching her." June said nothing, letting the silence hold what words couldn't. "I didn't believe in miracles anymore. Until your dog jumped into that water and pulled out a stranger's daughter like he'd known exactly where she was. It broke something open in me." June reached over and placed her hand on his. River, lying in the grass nearby, lifted his head, as if he understood, as if he always did. The air in Asheville that morning felt different, dense, almost electric. It wasn't the weather. The sky was clear. The breeze was soft. But there was something beneath it all humming, at a frequency only those who were listening could feel. June Whitaker had woken early. She hadn't needed an alarm. River had been sitting by her bedroom door when she stirred, eyes focused and unwavering. She knew that look. She didn't ask questions. It had been exactly 1 year since the fall. Now they walked together through the dappled sunlight along the trail to Trellis Overlook. The bridge hadn't changed, except for the reinforced railings where the accident had happened. City maintenance had ensured there would be no more gaps. And yet, as June approached the spot where River had fallen, her breath caught. River stopped, sat still as stone, and looked out over the river. She stood beside him, silent. Then, without hesitation, he rose on his hind legs and gently placed one paw on her chest. June's world shifted. The trees around her glowed, not with light, but with presence. She could feel them feel the water below, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Every insect, every ripple in the current, every gust of wind brushing past a leaf, she sensed it as though it moved through her own skin. There was no fear, just awe. She fell to her knees, tears blurring her vision, overwhelmed. Not by pain, but by something far more powerful: connection. River stepped back and sat quietly, tail curled around his feet. Dr. Rhea Belmont had followed at a respectful distance. Today she wore something softer than her usual gray suits, a navy field coat, jeans, and hiking boots. Her silver hair was pinned back but loosely. She had learned over months of observation that science didn't always require a lab. She watched as June slowly stood, dazed. "What did you feel?" Belmont asked gently. June turned to her, voice shaky. "Everything." River walked over to Belmont and gently rested a paw against her gloved hand. And just like that, her knees buckled. She caught herself on the railing, gasping. Her eyes darted, pupils wide, as though she were seeing the world behind the world. When it passed, she whispered, "He's not perceiving the world. He's inviting us into his perception." Belmont sat down on the bench behind them, stunned. "He's bridging awareness, temporarily linking his sensory matrix to ours. This isn't telepathy, it's consciousness integration. Bidirectional, adaptive." June sat beside her, quiet for a long time. "Do you think the fall did this?" Belmont nodded slowly. "I think the fall broke something. And from that fracture, something older, deeper came through." As they sat there, a city council van pulled into the far side of the trail. A few local officials stepped out, led by Mayor Elise Harmon, a kind-eyed woman in her 50s, with a warm southern voice and a cardigan she wore like armor. Elise approached with a brass plaque and a bundle of wildflowers. "We thought today would be a good day to honor him," she said softly. "What he's done this past year, saving that girl at Blue Echo, finding the missing hiker, and who knows how many more. We may never fully understand it, but we can say thank you." The plaque read, "River, the bridge between worlds. For courage, instinct, and the lives you've changed." They fastened it to the base of the lookout railing right beside the repaired section. River didn't bark. He didn't wag his tail. He simply sat beside it like he knew what it meant. That night, June couldn't sleep. The city had thrown a small celebration in the park near the clinic. Families came, kids posed for pictures. With River, a folk band played, and Liam brought a cooler of lemonade he insisted was medicinally excellent. But when the sun dipped low and the crowds left, it was just her and River again. They sat in the backyard of her home, surrounded by trees that whispered through the dark. "He's different now," Liam said quietly. He sat cross-legged on the grass, tossing a stick that River ignored. "Not just smarter. He's aware. Like he knows things about us we haven't even told ourselves yet." June smiled faintly. Maybe that's what he's here for. Not just to rescue people, but to remind us that there's more going on than we're willing to see. River lifted his head and looked at the stars. Then he stood, walked over to June, and pressed his forehead gently to hers. She closed her eyes. For just a second, she felt it again. Not thought, not language, just understanding. The world connected, breathing. Sometimes what changes our lives isn't loud or obvious. It's a silent paw at our side, a glance that sees deeper, a moment that connects us to something bigger than ourselves. River's story reminds us that the world is more alive than we often notice, that love, intuition, and connection might come in unexpected forms, and sometimes they arrive wrapped in fur and trust. In our daily lives, we rush past moments of instinct. We ignore the quiet signals, the unspoken feelings, the pull to check on someone, to pause to care. But maybe like River, we are all capable of sensing more, of feeling more. So today, trust that quiet tug inside you. Be present. Be kind. And when something tells you to reach out, do it. If River's story moved, you share it with someone who might need a reminder that miracles walk among us. Leave a comment below and tell us, what has your heart been trying to say lately? And if you want more stories like this, full of soul courage and connection, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your presence here means more than you know.